When planning this first head that we're going to build, the first thing I did was fill out a design sheet like the one we looked at earlier in the video. On it, I listed all the features that I wanted this head to have. I decided that I wanted to use a plastic human skull model kit as the base, and that I wanted eyes that would move in any direction and blink too. I also wanted a jaw that would open and close and some type of a neck joint that would allow the head to move in any direction. The skull kit I chose to use as a base was this Lindbergh plastic human skull model kit available from the Craft House Corporation. I found this to be a very good skull for building mechanics into because it's built so solid and it comes in only 3 pieces. It also comes with a hinged jaw, which will save you the time of making one. At the end of this program, I'll give you the information that you need to order one of these skull kits from the Craft House Corporation. The next decision I had to make was what to use for the eyes. I decided to use medium-sized roll-on balls off deodorant bottles for the eyes. I put a screw eye post in the back of the plastic ball, and I glued a rivet to each side of the socket to use as a pivot for the eyelid. I then bent a piece of wire to use for the actual eyelid, and I slipped it onto the rivets. After I constructed the eyes, I had to modify the plastic skull in order to hold them. The first thing I did, using a magic marker, was mark the portion of the skull that I wanted to remove in order to hold the eye mechanics. Next, using a dremel and a cutting tool, I removed that portion of the skull. When doing this, you'll want to check periodically to make sure that you're removing enough material. Removing this portion of the skull will take some time, and don't be surprised if you have to go back several times to remove more material. Next, I glued the eyes into place using hot glue. On the inside of the skull, I bent a piece of wire with a loop at each end and one in the middle, and connected it to the eye post with 2 small bolts. Then I placed small screw eyes around the inside of the skull and used them as eyelets for the cables that will move and blink the eyes. I then connected a small spring to each eyelid wire and connected the other end of the spring to a small screw eye on the inside of the skull. This will keep the eyelids in the open position. Since the jaw already moves freely, all that was needed there were a couple of small screw eyes to hold the spring that will keep the jaw in the closed position, and also a hole for the cable that will open the jaw. To make a neck joint that would move the head in any direction, I simply bolted a large rod end onto an eye bolt. I connected the eye bolt to a long piece of threaded rod using a threaded coupling. This threaded rod will be used as a stand and can be mounted to a bench or a base. Using PVC pipe and elbows, I fabricated a handle for the neck, and I placed it through the hole in the rod end. On the bottom of the skull, I hot glued a small PVC adapter. This will allow the head to be easily attached to or detached from the neck handle. The casings that hold the cables that control eye movement and blink were connected to the back of the skull by drilling holes and pressing the casing into them. The casing for the cable that controls jaw movement was held in place by a wire slipped through 2 holes in the bottom of the skull. The other end of the casings were attached to the controller by pressing them into holes. Cables were then strung through the casings and attached to the mechanics on the inside of the head. Rings made out of PVC pipe were attached to the control end of the cable. And the last thing we needed to do was to simply place the head on the pivoting neck. And as you can see, by simply moving the handle below, all kinds of neat neck movement can be made. And by pulling the rings on the controller, you can activate the mechanics in the head. Now, to operate this head properly would really require 3 operators, one on each control handle and then another one controlling the neck. But I would like to show you each movement before we move on. First of all, we have the left-right eye movement. Next, we have the up-down eye movement. Here we have the jaw. And last but not least, we have the eye blink. Now this head can easily be finished and made ready for filming by simply popping the eyes out and painting them, doing a little dental work, and then building up a foam or a latex skin onto the head. As you can see, this type of mechanical head is very easy to build, and it's fairly inexpensive too. The whole thing only cost about $50. Now let's take a look at another type of mechanical head you can build.